I'm now going to turn to our rapporteur, Mrs. Marjan Haak-Griffioen, and you now have the floor for 10 minutes as rapporteur, Mrs. Haak.
Thank you, Chair. Dear colleagues, I'm very grateful for the very interesting statements made by you and the mayor of Torino that stress the importance of the report about citizen participation of this Congress. A demonstration in Greece and Israel and the ongoing revolutions in the Arab world give us daily reminders that the role of citizens and civil society is in full evolution, that people need effective ways to express themselves and to participate in the democratic process. Equally, elected politicians at all levels need to give citizens the possibility to influence the political process in between elections. It's important to allow citizens to express their own preferences and opinions and to involve them directly in local and regional governance. This will improve transparency and increase public confidence in the democratic process. During the European Local Week of Democracy, there was a meeting in Utrecht about human rights. One of the sessions was about human rights to encourage citizen participation, and I heard it was very interesting. The participation of citizens is also very useful for politicians because citizens can be a source of innovation, information and feedback. In this regard, I would like to mention the CLEAR method, which can be used by local and regional authorities to evaluate and improve citizen participation. The participation of citizens in public life is a central component of the idea of democracy. Effective democracy isn't possible without the involvement of citizens. This is no less important at local and regional level than in national politics. That's why I'm very glad to present to you this report today. This report aims to assess direct democracy procedures at the local and regional level in Europe and current trends in citizen participation in the democratic process. The Council of Europe has repeatedly affirmed that participation is a basic element of democratic society in member states. The Committee of Ministers recommended in 2009 that governments cooperate with local and regional authorities and other stakeholders to evaluate democratic participation and its impact at local and regional level. At the Conference of Ministers in Utrecht in 2009, the ministers adopted the Utrecht Declaration, which confirms the need to increase the direct involvement of citizens in public affairs. The European Charter of Local Self-Government states that the right of citizens to participate in the conduct of public affairs is one of the democratic principles that are shared by all member states of the Council of Europe. This statement was further developed in the Charter's additional protocol on the right to participate in the affairs of local authorities. It is disappointing that this protocol, opened for signature in Utrecht in 2009, has only been ratified by 8 countries so far. If your country hasn't ratified yet, I would urge you to lobby your government to do so. On my initiative, Professor Edding of the University of Utrecht carried out some comparative research on participation. As a result of this, the former institutional committee of the Congress asked the group of independent experts to carry out a study on participation in the different states of Europe. A questionnaire was sent to the members of the group, and this report is based on the 34 national replies received. The report provides an overall assessment of the use of direct citizen participation at local and regional level throughout Europe. We discovered a great diversity of national approaches, both with regard to legislation and to the terminology used. In this report, citizen participation refers to the direct involvement of local and or regional citizens in the public decision-making process to enable them to express their own choices, preferences, or opinions. It looks at referendums, popular initiatives, public assemblies, and alternative forms of direct citizen participation. An instrument which is found in various countries is the possibility of establishing what are termed neighborhood councils. We heard about it from Strasbourg. Mainly in smaller municipalities. In the Netherlands, for example, these councils are private organizations of residents of a village or an urban neighborhood, which try to improve all kinds of aspects of living conditions in their neighborhood. The report concludes that the development of citizens' involvement can be achieved by a variety of different instruments and methods, and that the Congress can play a valuable role in collecting good practices and promoting them. Information technology can increase and widen a citizen's involvement, but we should also be reminded that it doesn't cover all groups of people. Another conclusion is that experience has shown that the legal environment doesn't always make participation easier. Rigid and complex conditions may deter even the most active people. However, simplification of the procedural rules is not enough. The different forms of participatory democracy need to be propagated, encouraged, and promoted through positive action by local and regional authorities. Since the improvement of local democracy and direct citizen participation is likely to be a key issue in the future activity of the Council of Europe, the Congress should follow the progress made by the Member States. The Monitoring Committee should therefore continue to consider citizen participation during its assessment of Member States. This report is important as a foundation for further discussion, but the real work has still to begin. The real work is very practical and can start with exchanging of sharing best practices. Now I read to you the resolution. In the resolution, the Congress asks its governance committee to consider closely following developments in citizens' participation across Europe and to facilitate regular exchanges of innovative and successful practice amongst members through the organization of specific meetings on the subject. It also expresses the willingness of the Congress to engage in dialogue with the Committee of Ministers on the use of evaluation of citizen participation. The Congress asks its monitoring committee to continue taking the right of citizens to participate in the conduct of local public affairs into account during its assessments of member states. Compliance with the European Charter of Local Self-Government. Furthermore, the Congress calls on local and regional authorities of the Council of Europe member states to make greater use of informal and alternative forms of participation, such as citizen panels, to use the possibilities provided by new information and communication technologies, to encourage local people to mobilize in groups and associations, to identify specific projects such as the development of community facilities where direct participation can be tested, and to actively participate in the European Week of Local Democracy as an effective way of increasing citizens' knowledge of local and regional democratic institutions. And most importantly, to enable us to continue this work. We should all make an effort to report regularly on citizen participation initiatives in our countries. And then the recommendation. In the recommendation, the Congress reaffirms its commitment to public participation in local and regional affairs as a basic right at the heart of democracy. The Congress recommends that the Committee of Ministers invites Member States to publish public data online, creating an open data source for public government information, to make greater use of existing instruments and in their countries for direct democracy at local and regional level, to introduce incentives to encourage local and regional authorities to use new information technologies, including social networks, to introduce participatory budgeting, and to sign and ratify additional protocol to the Charter on the Right of Participation. Finally, the Congress invites the Committee of Ministers to support the Congress in its efforts to continue taking the right of citizens to participate in the conduct of local public affairs into account during its visits to assess the application of the European Charter, and to continue its dialogue with the Congress on improving participation at the local and regional level. Thank you for your attention.
And thank you very much, Mrs. Haak-Griffioen, for introducing the report. The debate is now open. I have a list of 3 speakers who have indicated they'd like to intervene. The first of whom is Mr. Goncharenko from the Ukraine. Mr. Goncharenko, here, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank our rapporteur for a brilliant report and for your work. Really, citizen participation is the key point of local democracy, and the development of local democracy is a significant issue in a policy of the Ukrainian government and has a direct link with the European integration. In the Council of Europe, there is a strategy for innovation and good governance at local level. And I strongly believe that joining the principles of this strategy is a very good way for any country, including Ukraine, to strengthen local democracy and to engage citizen participation. The strategy, as well as European label for excellence governance, really helps the voices of people and experts to be heard. I can say this because Odessa Regional Council became the first regional or local authority in Ukraine who passed the evaluation according to the methodology of the Center of Expertise for Local Government Reform of the Council of Europe. And the cooperation between think tank Selagor and this center made this possible. According to research of Selagor, Odessa Regional Council, which I have an honor to represent here, received 2.01 points of maximum 4. So a little bit more than halfway to excellent governance we have already passed. And if to say seriously, Odessa region tested the strategy and made a conclusion that it is really very effective for strengthening the local democracy and encouraging people, engaging people to decision-making at local level. The audit also gave us very good understanding of the gaps which we have in our effectiveness. So our next tasks at the national level are exchanging our knowledge and experience among other regional and local authorities. Secondly, organizing the work at national level, including the creation of national platform of the strategy. And thirdly, preparing the necessary documents for its accreditation in the Council of Europe. As a conclusion, we would like to say and we would like to encourage other countries to join the strategy and to appeal for its accreditation toward the label. Also, we would like to ask the Congress to support and promote the strategy as much as it possible among its members. And finally, we would like to call on the Congress to support the adoption of the recommendation on the principles of good governance, which is currently under consideration at the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe. Thank you very much for attention.
Thank you very much for your intervention. Our next speaker is Mr. Us. Please, Mr. Us, the floor is yours.
Уважаемый господин председатель, уважаемые коллеги, прежде всего я хотел бы выразить свое глубокое удовлетворение тем фактом, что этот очень важный и интересный вопрос был поставлен в повестку дня, а также поблагодарить докладчика.
It's already been said here that in Europe we are increasingly witnessing protests, demonstrations in the streets. People are going out in the streets in large numbers. We're talking about countries as well that have good levels of prosperity and good social standards as well, and where the governments are very solid and well run. So the question is, are the systems that we have now really that good? Do they take account of the interests of all social groups? Apparently, the systems aren't ideal, and we ought to be improving them so that we, local and regional elected representatives, can act better in coping with the problems. There is a lack of trust as regards politicians. We need to do something about that, try and improve the trust as well. We are seeing the use of communication technologies as well, with the social networks. These groups exist now, these networks exist, and they are having a much bigger impact now, a decisive impact indeed, sometimes on the societies and how they are developing. So I do think that we need to take more account nowadays of globalization and how new communication information technologies are having an impact on our societies. We mustn't be left behind. We need to be ahead of these developments. In fact, we need to develop social cohesion and more. Now, there have been a number of projects that are carried out in my country, and I think that if we carry on with what we're doing and if it works, then we can, of course, let you have the results of those projects.
Just before I call our next speaker, could I just make an announcement that anyone who wishes to intervene in the debate on local democracy in Slovenia, could you please indicate to the Secretariat your interest in speaking in that debate now, please? That would be very helpful for us to know how we're going to get through our business. So I'm now going to call our next speaker, who is Mr. Svensson, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, thank you, Madam Rapporteur. You have achieved an excellent work on a very important issue. And as an active local politician with a commitment to the participation of individuals and NGOs in democratic issues, I would like to say a few words. The European democratic model is built upon the representative democracy, where the political parties play a crucial role. But democracy must be combined with additional tools and initiatives to give individuals efficient opportunities to influence the decision-making process. And all across Europe, different methods to engage citizens in various political issues are being developed. This process is well described in the report. As members of the Congress, we should take the development into our minds and put it on our local or regional political agendas. Saying this, I also underline what the report states. There is not a one-size-fits-all approach. Cultural as well as local factors can influence the effectiveness of participation initiatives. If we combine the representative democracy with a strong civil dialogue, we can build a better and healthier society. A sustainable democracy requires a developed representative democracy and a strong civil dialogue. Representative democracy needs to be a participatory democracy, and this report on our table today is an essential contribution to this process. The Conference of International NGOs have developed the Code of Good Practice on Civil Participation in the Decision-Making Process. The Congress has also announced its support to the Code of Good Practice. The Congress said, according to this code, that it is, I quote, ready to contribute to the promotion of this reference tool. This Code of Good Practice is a very useful tool when we at the local and regional level take further steps to build a stronger dialogue with individuals and organizations. Good relations built on mutual trust and an open and structured dialogue can be a very important and useful as bridges between the representative democracy, its institution, and all people. Dear colleague, this report is very useful in our common mission as local and regional politicians. And let me also express my hope that we as well can use the Code of Good Practice in this work. We have a common responsibility to do so and to keep in mind what we already have declared. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Svensson. I've had the indication that there's one more speaker in this debate who will actually be speaking a little bit later on, but Mr. Babayev, yes, you'd like to intervene in this, please.
Спасибо, уважаемый председатель. У меня вопрос к выступающему Рафику, госпожа Рафику. Очень она интересно выступила.
Thank you very much. I have a question. I thought it was a very interesting debate what we had with regard to this whole issue, and I would like to say that this is a method, it's an administration of decentralization. This administration, I think, is of great interest to us. But the question is this. What are the methods? Or rather, how are you able to attract the members of these neighborhood councils? How can you attract them? I mean, do you have a method? What do you use? What particular approach do you use, madam, to try to attract people to come along to be part of these neighborhood councils? Thank you.
Спасибо.
Thank you very much indeed. So that concludes my list of speakers. I'm going to go back to Mrs. Haak-Griffioen. Would you like to respond, maybe answer some of the questions that have been posed to the debate, please?
Yes, well, I can be very short, I suppose, and I think the last question was for Mr. Rafi. So, yeah. So,
you got the right to reply.
Okay. Yeah, I think the most important thing is said by Mr. Svensson. There's no size-fits-all approach. And there are a lot of instruments, and you need them all. You need them all because there are a lot of different groups in society. And when you want to reach people, you need all the instruments you have. And therefore, I think it's very important that we have, that this is only the start of the debate. We have to debate all the time about good experiences, best practices, all those things who help each other to find new instruments to reach just that neighborhood or just that group of people. So we have to start the work, and I think it's very interesting to hear about Strasbourg. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And now, Al, you might want to have a quiet word in the ear of Mr. Babayev to explain how you do these things.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président. Comment,
Thank you very much. Well, how are we able to mobilize and interest people at the neighborhood councils? Well, the first, I think, depends on the way in which the neighborhood councils are made up, or the membership. As I said, partly is volunteers, and then another part is try to have 3 different colleges, and you draw them by lots. One is the inhabitants, one is associations, and the other one is socio-professional players. And I think the way in which the neighbourhood councils are made up, the membership of them, I think that there's a kind of selection, really, because it's only those people who are mobilised, who are interested by what's going on in the neighbourhood, that come along, because these neighbourhoods are divided up. The parts of the city are divided by neighbourhood, and I think that this is really the first factor which mobilises people and encourages them to come and be members. And the second, I think, is part of the projects which are discussed, because in the neighbourhood councils, all the projects which affect their neighbourhood are discussed. In other words, all the municipal policies which affect them are submitted to the neighbourhood councils for discussion. And of course, sometimes the neighbourhood councils can decide themselves what they want to discuss. It isn't always the municipality who has to propose what they're going to be discussed. If we were to do that, then this would be a kind of creating a relation of dependency which we don't want. So the neighbourhood councils are also able to decide for themselves what subjects they want to discuss and to prepare them together with the locally elected representatives. And then I think that mobilization, that is the third factor, which I think encourages this mobilization. It's the way in which they work, the way the neighbourhood councils actually work. You see, they are autonomous, they've got a budget, they've got membership that they themselves decide on, they've got a working method which they themselves decide on how to do it. So nothing is imposed upon them. It kind of comes from within the neighbourhood council, and so they organise according to their concerns, the time they have, and also the projects which interest them. And it seems to me that those factors taken together which make it possible to have mobilisation and interest in the neighbourhood councils. As I said just now in my statement, of course, there are some restrictions and limits which we've met following on the first evaluation that we had. There's some things which can be improved. For example, if it comes from the municipality and we put forward projects, well, henceforth, what we're going to be doing is we're going to tell about them as early as possible, rather than avoid a situation which creates a lot of frustration, that once we've decided on a project, nothing more can be added to it, and then we only allow people to discuss them. So we want to give them, tell people about them as early as possible, as upstream as possible, but it seems to be that these are factors which are necessary, maybe not exhaustive, but enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much for allowing us to squeeze that little bit of extra information from you in addition to your intervention. That concludes the debate.